Siam Lee was born in 1997 in Hong Kong. Her mother, Carmen, worked as a sex worker, and her father was a successful and wealthy businessman from Johannesburg. Siam's mother attended a private school before she dropped out and pursued a career in dancing, which took her to Asia, where she met Siam's father and later gave birth to Siam. Siam was described as the kindest and gentlest person who loved animals and nature. She worked hard and was determined to keep going forward in the best way possible. In 2002, when Siam was 5 years old, her and her mother moved from Hong Kong to Durban. 3 years later, in 2005, Siam's father was murdered in his home in Clifton Beach, Cape Town. However, she did not inherit his money. He, however, left her a trust fund, which enabled Siam to attend an expensive and prestigious school in Durban. Siam finished school in 2015, and after she finished school, she hoped to be a teacher and travel the world. However, her dreams were halted because as soon as she matriculated, her trust fund payments stopped. She hoped that the trust fund will be reinstated so that she could go to university. And in the meantime, for the next 2 years between 2015 and 2017, she started doing various jobs such as being a promoter, a waitress, and selling pool chemicals. In 2017, things changed when Siam's mother, Nan, who was still working in the sex work industry, was injured in an accident and was unable to work. And this is when Siam was introduced to the sex work industry by her mother. Siam's mother took her under her wing and they worked as a duo, performing sensual massages in an upmarket brothel in Durban North.
It's very important people understand that Siam was never ever a prostitute and she was never ever going to become one. This was a means to an end until trust fund would be reinstated.
In 2018, Siam was working at the brothel when a black Mercedes Viano arrived at the brothel around 4 p.m. A man came out of the car carrying a gun and he barged into Siam's room and forced her into the Mercedes Benz. He then sped away from the brothel. About 200 meters and 2 minutes after he had kidnapped Siam, the Mercedes was involved in an accident. The man driving the Mercedes did not stop after he hit another car. The other car, which the Mercedes had hit, started chasing down the Mercedes because the driver wanted the insurance information of the person who was driving the Mercedes Benz. The driver had no idea that there was a kidnapped girl inside that Mercedes. The other car then ended up hitting the Mercedes from the back. However, the Mercedes did not stop and sped away with Siam inside. Siam was then reported missing, and the case received a lot of attention from the media and social media as well. A sketch of the man who had kidnapped Siam was then released. On the 6th of January 2018, 2 days after Siam was kidnapped, a farmer was taking his grandson fishing when he stumbled upon the remains of 20-year-old Siam Lee in a sugarcane field in New Hanover, just outside Durban. Siam's body was burnt beyond recognition and she had no teeth. The killer had bludgeoned her with a hammer and it is believed that she was still alive when she was set alight.
She was lying in this dying swan pose. And this hand was not burnt, it was the same color. Her flesh was normal, and her nail varnish was on this hand. But when I looked into her face, she had a whole hole in her face. There was no face, and there were no teeth.
Like I said before, Siam's case received a lot of media attention and her story touched a lot of people, including a private investigator by the name of Brad Nathanson. Siam's case touched Brad Nathanson so much that he decided to investigate the case free of charge. One of the first things that he did was receive information that the car that had kidnapped Siam was involved in an accident just a couple of meters from the brothel. Brad Nathanson then tracked any insurance claims that had been made for a black Mercedes Viano which had damages from the back. He received information that on the 9th of January 2018, a black Mercedes Viano matching the description of the one that had kidnapped Siam had filed an insurance claim.
Tipping point, because what that got us to do was to check with the various insurance companies to see if a claim had been put in. We established that a claim had been put in.
The car belonged to a 29-year-old man named Cebelinkosi Philani Gift Ntuli. He mostly went by Philani Ntuli. Philani Ntuli was a 29-year-old man. Even though he was only 29, he was very successful. He was a biochemist and owned a diesel processing plant. This wasn't the first time that Philani's name had been linked to crimes. There were two notable crimes that he was linked to. The first one was with his ex-fiancée, a woman named Lakim Tembu. He was facing charges of assault and attempted murder because he had allegedly harassed his ex-fiancée during the course of their relationship. Lakim Tembu lived in constant fear of Philani to the extent that she was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Even though she was in the hospital, Philani constantly harassed her. Another notable case that Philani was allegedly involved in was in March 2016. He allegedly kidnapped a sex worker and held her at gunpoint and kept her captive at his house, where he continuously assaulted her but later released her. He was never charged with regards to this case. Philani was also under investigation for fraud from the Department of Environmental Affairs with regards to his businesses. That was some background information on Philani Ntuli and the type of person that he was. After finding out the information from the insurance company, he drove to Philani's house and found the black Mercedes Viano parked in his garage. Philani was not at the house, so Brad called the police and the police came and impounded the car. Brad and the police then hid and waited for Philani to come home. Philani eventually came home and they watched him open the garage and stand in shock, realizing that the black Mercedes was gone.
We watched him from up there. We watched him open the garage and literally stand there in shock for 20 seconds whilst he looked around for the motor car that wasn't there.
Police then arrested Philani Ntuli. In October 2017, 3 months before Siam's death, Philani had found Siam's contact details on an adult website where she had advertised herself as a sensual masseuse. He then became Siam's client. On the first day that he visited Siam at the brothel for a massage, he asked her out on a date and she agreed. When Siam returned from the date, she told her mom that he was weird and she never wanted to see him again. According to Philani Ntuli, he had been a client of Siam for about 3 months. According to him, he had borrowed Siam 250,000 rands and she had promised to pay it back. On the day of Siam's abduction, he had had his last patience with Siam. He went to the brothel and demanded his money back. He thought that if he took her somewhere else, she would give him his money. He said that he had killed Siam because he was afraid she would go to the police. However, police believe that Siam had rejected Philani's advances and he did not take it well, so he kidnapped her and held her captive for 2 days. He had tried to strangle her, however he was not successful, so he went to a nearby garage near his house and bought 25 liters of petrol. He then went with Siam to the sugarcane field where he killed her. He placed a blanket over her head and hit her with a hammer repeatedly. He then set her alight. The black Mercedes-Benz that Philani was driving came equipped with a tracker which Philani did not know of. They were able to track Philani's movements from the day that Siam was kidnapped to the day she was brutally murdered. Philani denied all charges and he was granted 40,000 rands bail. And when he was out on bail in June 2019, he died of skin cancer. There were rumors that because he was such a wealthy man and he could afford and had the resources to fake his own death, but according to police, they concluded a visual inspection of his body and they took fingerprints which confirmed that Philani Ntuli had died. That's the end of this week's case. If you did enjoy this case, please do like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much.